So, I'm making this to accompany the previous video I uploaded, and I am going to explain the I should say dungeon I just went in with three of the most pathetic and stupid stooges I've ever fucking played with. And I'm going to explain, first up, what's happening in the clip, then the complaints they had with me, because of course there are complaints with me, and then three, the actual problem. So I want to start off by saying the three of them almost certainly playing together, and almost certainly in Discord. My guess is the little Lala healer girl is an actual e-girl playing with two dudes who are white knighting the hell out of her because she is completely and utterly in the fucking wrong, and I'm going to explain why in that clip. Now, I'm going to talk about after the clip as well because a lot happened. But to start with, the clip. Which, by the way, I just want to say, this is like a pretty damn good example of the most negative side of this game. This game is like a very positive game, trust me. But there is a lot of issues, I'll be going into that. However, again, this is one of the two notable toxicity moments I've experienced in this game. Other one being in the exact same dungeon, actually. And I think I was also tanking. Or was healing. I don't know. Anyway, I think I still have the video uploaded so you can see it. But, alright, what happens in the clip? So, I'm playing the tank, and starting off, right? I run, and I should first up explain this region. I'm in the Stone Vigil, which, you know what? It's cheap to teleport back here. I want you to see a pretty cool looking place. So I'm in the Stone Vigil, which is a dungeon, and the way this dungeon's set up is there's 6 groups of enemies, and you can do what's called a wall-to-wall. You should never do this, by the way. Almost certainly going to end in a wipe. But there's a thing called the wall-to-wall, where you grab every single enemy that you can, all the way up to the boss fight. And I don't do that, because that's stupid. So anyway, when you pull in this game, you'll often pull big, which is grabbing 1 or 2 groups of enemies. However, in lower level dungeons, they often have no barrier between the second and third pull. And also, you can just kind of take more enemies on at once because they're not that difficult to handle. So, what I like to do is have 2 sets of pulls. So I'll pull the first 3 enemies and then the second set of 3 enemies. And that's what I was doing in this clip. And the way I set about doing it is so I don't do the exact same thing they claimed I did. But what happens in the clip is, right, I start off and I sprint. Now, the healer, massive blunder, they didn't follow, they didn't, like, very soon after I started sprint, they didn't sprint. They should have. And instead it took them a good ways into the pool to start sprinting, so they're pretty far behind, which I would like to make note of when I'm talking about their criticism of me. So anyway, that's like a small thing, that's whatever. It still would have worked out fine if this healer was actually good. So, I made the pull, and then I was running, grabbing the second group. And then to grab the third group, it's a bit tricky. They're in this room, and so what I usually do is I peek in the room, chuck my axe with the whole tomahawk attack, I'll chuck it at them, and then I'll pull them back into the hallway. There's a reason I do this. 2 reasons, actually. First up, in that room, there's a 4th group of enemies, or single enemy, I should say. There's a 4th enemy who, if your teammates aren't being careful, they might accidentally pull it, and that could potentially lead in them dying if you're not paying attention, and that's just a whole lot more stress on the healer. You just don't want to do it. So I like to pull them out of the room. And also, so that the healer doesn't lose line of sight, because in order to heal, you have to have line of sight with the tank. Now, I'm going to explain the criticisms now. The first criticism, my item level. I'm purposely wearing the exact same thing I wore in the dungeon. So, first up, I got this piece out of the dungeon. I'm wearing it because I got it. Whatever. I'll just swap to this. My item level is 28, alright? And the item level of this is 43. My average item level is 28. You can see it towards the offhand thing. And the item level of the armor from that dungeon is 43. So I have a 15 item level difference. They were complaining that my armor was way too bad. Now, first up, early game item level is a lie. It might sound weird, but it is a lie. Because all of this stuff has pretty high item level. All of it's over 30. You know, you'd think my item level would be like 35-ish. so I'd only be like 7 off. But, not 7, that's bad math, 8. But, I'm not, because of my jewelry, which, this stuff, I have a level 1 jewelry, I actually have a bunch of low-level jewelry. Jewelry means absolutely nothing until you pass main story, because this is a level 1 choker. It gives me 1 in all stats. And then the level 18 gives me 2 in all stats. I'd have a very minuscule buff. Let's see what my stats are. I would have like a 1% buff. This is just dragging my item level down, which is why I call it a lie. My item level is more around 34, 35. And it's like that's not that bad. And especially because early game, item level also doesn't really matter, because the point where item level matters is when you're going up from a expansion. So when you're going from main story to the Heaven's Ward expansion, that's when you want to have better items. That's when you want to get the most up-to-date items. When you're going Heaven's Sword to the next one and the next one and the next one, you want to have better and better armor, because it's incredibly important. Now, they were complaining that I had bad items, which, first up, this character is a noob. This was the first time this character set foot in that dungeon. And if I'm just a noob going through main story, why would I want to, for no reason at all, at level 43, buy the absolute best armor I can, just for a fucking dungeon? You're a noob, and you don't even have to do that at like higher levels. Because within the expansion, item level doesn't fucking matter. For example, level 73 armor has an item level of 400. Level 77 armor has an item level of 412. A 12 item level difference. And the stat gain is incredibly minuscule. Same thing for main story. It's very small. It doesn't mean a fucking thing. So I'm going to show you the best armor. It's not the exact best armor I could have for the dungeon, but close enough. So pay attention to my HP, vitality, and defense. So I'm just going to say 2579, 384, because those are the ones that matter really. I got about a 300 HP boost and like an 100 defense boost. Minuscule. It would have done fucking nothing. That wasn't the problem. They were just pointlessly blaming it because I had fairly bad armor. I know the importance of armor. I'm a really good player of this game, and I've played it a lot. I have leveled every single one of my characters up from level 1 to 50 using items I get out of a dungeon. Even tanks. And I've done this exact same pull with every other tank, even this warrior tank on my main account. And I've had worse armor, and I managed to survive. So it literally means nothing. It means nothing. Which is why it's so fucking funny that they're complaining about that. This one moment I've ever played this game where they had an actual good reason to complain about my item level, because I was using items before Heaven's Sword, and I was in a Heaven's Sword expansion dungeon, meaning my item level should be double. That is a pretty big difference. I didn't have the best items, armor, or anything. That's why ever since then I have been upgrading my gear as soon as I reach the next expansion. Because in that dungeon, the tank had the pole smaller, and I had to constantly heal him. I felt bad. That's a noticeable difference. It doesn't mean anything at this small of a change. So, already I've proved that item level doesn't mean a thing. I'm going to charge this headset real quick. Now, the next complaint, which I've briefly kind of hinted at earlier, losing line of sight. They claimed I broke line of sight. Now, if you watch the clip, you can see there was only 2 moments I broke line of sight. I explained the first one because the first one, it was expected. I peeked in the room to grab the enemies, and I came back out. Now, you'll notice, as I was coming out, the little Lala ran in. I wish I had the messages they sent. That would be priceless. But in the messages, the Lala claimed I ran in the room, they followed, then I ran out. I explained in a pretty kind, thoughtful manner that you were entering the room as I exited, which is exactly what you see happen. In fact, it's even worse. I was already out of the room when they were entering the room. So they had no goddamn good reason to do that, but they did. And even then, they still had line of sight of me. The only time I broke line of sight then was when I was pulling the enemies. And then the second time I broke line of sight, I was avoiding an AoE. It was for a minuscule amount of time. I was already on full HP. It affected fucking nothing. They were just being a whiny bitch, complaining about anything they could, because they didn't want to admit the actual problem, which was the healer. The healer was so fucking bad. Okay, so, as healer, there's a lot of things you kind of need to know. You need to have a lot of knowledge. This one had fucking none. Stone Vigil is a really unique dungeon in the sense that enemies do a lot more damage than they really should be. It's weird. It is. He was blaming that on the armor level because, I mean, I can kind of see where he's coming from. If you're in Hawk Manor, Brave Flax Longstop, they're not that far behind. You can pull the entire level, and you wouldn't be taking as much damage as you would be just pulling two groups from Stone Vigil. Or I should say the entire, you could pull 3, and you wouldn't be taking as much as you would from pulling 2. They, for no reason, blamed that on me, when it's actually kind of Stone Vigil. And even then, healers have been able to still power through. So that was also not even really a good complaint. And if you watch, during the pull, they started casting Stone Tube, which is a single target spell for healers. So they were doing damage on one enemy when I have about 10 enemies pulled, meaning it's gonna do nothing, instead of healing me when they should have just fucking healed me. Now, I want to kind of bring up a reference. I just did that dungeon right before I recorded this, and I did that pull, and I had a healer that was new to healing. You can even, if I can go all the way back, I don't need to. Why am I doing this? He said that, but yeah, he says right here, please no large pulls, I'm trying to learn. He was a pretty new healer, and he was playing one of the worst outright healers, and that dude was playing the best outright healer, the Lala. So they had just no goddamn excuse to be doing Stone 2 to DPS one person in a very large pull. If they healed me, we would have survived. They didn't. They were just bad. And that wasn't the only case. I only brought that up because that was the thing that we spent the entire fucking match arguing about, when I, pretty shortly after the incident, just typed in, it's over, it's done, let's just not talk about it. Because I was getting fucking annoyed. I knew I was in the right, I knew they were in the wrong. It's whatever. They didn't want to shut up about it. And one of the fucking White Knights was one of those assholes that is like, they're like the people that say, so when I said I peeked in the room to grab the enemies and came back out, which you saw, they typed in chat, you literally admitted to breaking line of sight, and then you claimed you didn't. Like, I explained to them, I went back out so the healer would have fucking line of sight, and he just said, you literally, he repeated the same fucking thing. He was just an annoying piece of shit. Anyway, with the newer healer that was playing one of the worst healers, healed better than the fucking white mage. So, it was no goddamn good excuse. And they, on frequently even smaller pulls, I died. I died during a boss fight. I died during a single pull of one group of enemies, because they just weren't fucking healing. That was just such a fucking bad. I hope they wipe continuously. They just keep blaming it onto the tanks, until one day, they open their fucking eyes and realize this is just a shitty healer. I'm a fucking pro healer. I should know when someone's bad. That person was bad. Anyway, to explain the fallout, we continued to argue over that. Again, after I said, can we just not talk about it, I stopped talking about it, because I didn't want it to fucking go on. But they continued to fucking go on. And then, at the, end of the dungeon, right before the boss fight, they kicked me. The pathetic pieces of shit kicked me. And this is where I'm going to go into a bit of a systemic problem with the game. The game has this mentor system where mentors, someone that's played a lot of the game, can go in and do dungeons with newer players and help them through it. This account, by all means, is a newer player. I'm not a new player, obviously, but this account is a newer player, and they had a combat and crafting mentor. They should be helping this account. They should maybe have, instead of just blaming nothing on me and continuously fucking bitching and then kicking me for no goddamn good reason. Should have been like saying, like, I get it. They might have thought, the healer might have bullshitted saying, oh, he broke line of sight. That was the reason for the wipe. Whatever. They might have said that. Don't be a little bitch about it and then just try and explain it. I would have told them off. Still, I would have explained the actual truth about it, but they were just being assholes about it. And then to fucking kick the person. Like, that's the worst thing. It's a problem that if you look on Reddit, you see a lot of people commenting about. It's not that difficult to become a mentor. It's difficult, but not that difficult. I have double the qualifications to become a mentor, except one, which is have a combat class to level 90. As soon as I do that, boom, I can be a mentor for both combat and crafting. That's the only qualification I'm missing. And it's really easy to do it. A lot of people have been able to do it within like 2 months of playing the game. And a lot of people join it for the prestige, because when you're a mentor, you see next to my name I have the little sprout. That's a sign that you're a noob. If you're a mentor, you have instead of a crown, and if you're combat, it's a sword. If you're crafting, it's a hammer. And if you're both, it's just a full-on crown. So they do it for the prestige of having a crown. And a lot of mentors are just assholes who do stuff like that. There's been cases of mentors joining an in-progress match, being a bit upset with the tank, and then instead of like actually helping the tank out, they just fucking kick the tank. But which, by the way, them kicking me is how I know that they're playing together. Who in their right mind kicks a tank for no good reason? I was doing all the mechanics right. In fact, they kicked me when I was the one that was in the right, which is the funniest thing. I feel like I've been going on a little too long about this, but yeah, that's kind of what I have to say. It was just a case of a really bad healer blaming it on me because I am a noob. This count as a noob. If I had the mentor, they wouldn't be blaming on me, probably. And they blamed it on my armor for no good reason. Like I said, armor means nothing, really. I bet I could beat that dungeon pulling 2 groups of enemies without any armor on. Actually, maybe not, but with low level, like level 20 armor on, I could probably beat it. It's a whole thing. I'm gonna go teleport to Gridania, and I'm actually gonna check jewelry just like to show you what I mean by it does nothing. Let me think of anything else I can add. Like, I didn't get kicked in the second time I did it, and I in fact got a commendation, which means they were happy with my performance. So, like, in fact, this account has a lot of commendations, because guess what? I'm good at the game. I know how to play. Yeah. I don't know. But I should actually explain how long it would probably take to get mentored, theoretically. So you have to do 1,000 dungeons and get, I believe they bumped up the quota to 1,000 commendations. No, it's 800. So you have to beat 1,000 trials, I should say, and get 800 commendations, which at the end of the match, all 4 players get a commendate who they thought did the best. So that's like really easy to farm out, believe it or not. To get the 1,000 dungeons, you go in a trial unsynced. Basically, every 15 seconds you can do a dungeon, which means like 4 minute, 240 an hour. So you'd get about 4 hours, you'd get the dungeon requirement over with. For the commendations, you would do guild tests. Commendations would definitely take longer, but I would still guess 12 hours, let's say. 16 hours of grinding in order to get those qualifications, and then you just have to level something up to 90 and do the class quest, which takes time, but I guess 20 hours. Meaning I could probably create an account and in a week get combat mentor. Even though I have experienced nothing of the game. I've experienced nothing. Alright, let's look at market board. So for my rings, that's going to be my weakest spot for one of my rings. That's a necklace. So I would, my bad. Actually, that's not even for combat. My bad. I'd get 3 extra in 2 of my stats and 5 extra in 1. Huge difference. Me, a noob, should go spend 21,000 to do this, so 3 people won't bitch about it in the dungeon. Yep, makes sense. It does nothing, man. Trust me. So yeah, item level's a lie. Those people were just really fucking bad. Even with all this gear on. 43, 43, 43, 34, 43, 40. My average is 31. That's how you know it's a lie. The jewelry brings it down. Anyway. It dragged on way too long, but that's what I'm gonna call it. In the comments, like, ask any questions if you want. Like, if I didn't properly explain something, feel free to ask it. I still recommend you play this game. Like, I highly recommend it. This is, like I said, one of 2 bad experiences I've had in dungeons that I can think of. And when you play this game, like, I don't know. Maybe you should do, like, free trial. Because it's free. You can play a lot of it. And, like, a lot. You have 1,000 hours of content. I got recommended a video, which I've started watching, about a guy who spent 1,000 hours in the free trial. You can do a lot. So, yeah, I recommend you check that out. Free trial has heavy restrictions, but they're not that heavy. They're to try and limit duping. So the market board, which you just saw me peek at, you can't buy anything out of there. However, the solution is going to crafting, which can be fun. I genuinely kind of miss crafting my own armor. At a certain point, the time is not worth it, and you just buy it. You just become rich and you buy it. And then for, why you could have a maximum of 300 gil. Basically, money does nothing in free trial, but still, I recommend it. You can go through the story, experience it at your own pace. It definitely gets more interesting. The current where I'm at is pretty damn interesting. Where I was just in that snowy area I showed you, and like, it's this whole plot about an area that continuously snows, and this whole, like, conspiracy of dragons, and people will often side with dragons, so inquisitors from the church come over to hang and kill all those traitors, and guess what? There's a little bit of corruption in the church. Interesting stuff like that. The whole dragon questline is very interesting. Like, when you get into Heavensward, it starts, but basically, Ishgard was founded. Ishgard is like the big city in that snowy place. It was founded off of a pact between 3 great dragons, and together they, like, created Ishgard. And many years passed. They had this great pact going, and the humans betrayed the dragons by taking the eyes of one of them and killing them. Which, for dragons, their eyes bring immense power, but it also corrupts the soul. And then Nidhogg, in a fit of rage, began to attack them, to which they then blinded Nidgard by taking his eyes out. Like, it's a whole thing. But it's real interesting and cool. Like, the whole dragon storyline, there's a lot of dragon stuff going on, and it's all pretty cool. So I'd still recommend the game. Yeah. That's it.